At the edge of the world, at land's end, there is a headland extending into the sea. At the end of that headland stands a tower. The 9th tower. Within the tower lies mystery and meaning, truth and troth, revelations and realizations. All you need to do is open the door. Welcome back to Tales from the 9th Tower. I'm Lothar Tuppan. Today's tale is a story that many people know. It's a story that lives in many places. This version lives behind a red door. Once upon a time when there was just more. There was a huge house. In this house there were beds that were softer, stairs that were taller, sunshine that was brighter, shadows that were longer, and the smell of the very best cooking was everywhere. Within this house was a child who followed the delicious smells like an eager and greedy wolf. Within this house was a room with a red door that held the story. A common story, known to almost all people who recognize that those who have come before have laid the layers of our lives. Are you sure you don't know this story? Oh, and in case you're wondering, that particular spice you smell is just a dash of paprika. The eager hunting child following the scent opened the red door and saw an old man with a large gray mustache kneeling in front of a table in the far corner of the room. The table was filled with old pictures, candles, a small plate of food, and a glass of wine. He was talking softly to the items on the table. "What are you doing?" asked the child. "Hello, little one. This is the altar through my ancestors. Your ancestors." "What's that?" "It's a place where you honor all the people you're related to. The dead ones, at least." "But why are you giving them food? They're dead." "Of course they're dead. If they were alive, I'd choose to play cards with them. Because they are dead, I give them offerings, and thanks for all of the help they give us. If I didn't, they might take offense and leave." "Are you telling me there are ghosts here? And that you want them to stay?" "They're not ghosts. At least not the way you think. And even if they were, what's so bad about a ghost? Without ghosts, my grandparents wouldn't have been alive to bring my father into the world. You see, my grandfather became a very successful meat merchant, but he wasn't always successful. He wandered much of the kingdom of the Habsburgs without knowing anything that he should do to make his way in the world. He tried many trades without success, traveling from town to town. While he was walking past a cemetery on one of such trips, he heard angry shouting coming from the graves. My grandfather wasn't stupidly brave, but he wasn't a coward either. He quietly snuck closer to the ruckus until he could see what was going on. There was a fat, greasy, bald man with a large stick beating upon a grave, swearing the foulest things at the dead man. This enraged my grandfather. "Have you no respect for the dead? Why are you beating this poor man's grave?" This man owes me 80 gold coins. Now he is dead, and I'll get nothing. Nothing!" "Stop that! If I pay you the 80 gold, will you leave the dead in peace?" You would pay his debt?" "Yes, if you will just go away." "All right. Yes." "Here is your 80 gold. Now go away." Now, as soon as he calmed down a bit, grandfather almost regretted doing his good deed. He had given away half of his money. The next town is going to be very tough going for him, I think. Halfway to the next town, grandfather came across a group of people traveling the same road. And so he walked with them to make things more pleasant. One man, by the name of Sandor, had some ideas for grandfather. "Why don't you start a butcher shop? They have need for a good butcher. You could do well. I would do it myself, but I only have 80 gold, and I would need at least 150, 160 to put myself into business." "I've never been a butcher. I wouldn't know how to begin." "Oh, it's easy. Nothing to it." "I have an idea. I only have 80 gold also. Why don't we go into business together? We will be equal partners. All right. A fine idea, my friend. So grandfather and his new partner set up their butcher shop. Grandfather sold the meat, Sandor cut the meat. They split the profits 50-50. Within 2 years, they were very successful. It was the third year that would prove the most interesting, though. See, the Burgermeister had a daughter who he sent to pick up his meat. She was one of the most beautiful girls in the whole town, with long, raven dark hair and eyes that showed fire and spirit. Well, grandfather fell in love with her the first time he saw her, and he just fell deeper and deeper every time they met. His love sickness got so bad, it was affecting his work. So Sandor confronted him. What is the name of the Burgermeister's daughter? Katrina. Katrina, right. Why don't you go and woo Katrina? It's obviously what you want to do more than anything. I can't, Sandor. Haven't you heard? She has been married 3 times before, and every one of her husbands died on the wedding night. She's cursed. Nonsense. I will help, and nothing will happen to you. I've never let you down yet, have I? All right, Sandor, I'll try it. So, grandfather began to woo Katrina, and with Sandor as his advisor, Sandor was quite the ladies' man, it turns out, you see. Grandfather won Katrina's heart. Before the year was over, they would be married. Sandor, of course, would be grandfather's best man, and before the ceremony he said, Tonight, do not on any account lie down with Katrina. When you get home, tell her that you forgot something at work. Go away and shut the girl in. Let her spend the night alone. How can I do that? This is our wedding night, Sandor. Do you want to end up like the rest of her husbands? No. Then you must do as I say. Grandfather did exactly as Sandor said, and returned home to a hurt and angry bride. Unable to explain to his bride, he went to the store to talk with Sandor, but when he arrived, he saw that Sandor was packing up all of his belongings. Sandor, what are you doing? You are married now. You have a thriving business. I must go back to my hometown now. All that is left is for us to divide our earnings. But Sandor, you are my partner, my best friend. My best friend. I don't understand. And what about my wife? I did as you said, and if my life wasn't in danger before, it certainly is now. She's very upset. What am I to do tonight? You just can't leave me like this. I have no choice in the matter, my friend. But I have an idea. Why don't you bring your wife and the 3 of us can travel together? I promise you that before I reach my old home, you will be free from danger and ready to be with your wife happily. Now, Katrina was still very upset, but since she liked Sandor and would miss him, it was easy enough for grandfather to convince her to come along for the journey, walking down the road where grandfather and Sandor first met 3 years before. After walking for most of the day, they sat down under a tree to rest. Katrina quickly fell asleep. Grandfather would have fallen asleep with her, except for Sandor. No sleeping for you, my friend. First, we need to finish our business. After the money and ownership was settled, Sandor said, We also earned Katrina between us, so we must divide her too. What? I don't understand any of this, Sandor. Explain yourself. Would you betray our partnership? Cried Sandor. His eyes glowed bright red, and the light played oddly around his body. Grandfather was paralyzed. This was the most terrifying thing he had ever seen. Katrina, meanwhile, had woken up due to Sandor screaming. Sandor pulled out his knife and ran at the girl. Demon! Leave this woman! Release her heart! Katrina began to shake, and a black snake came out of her mouth, trying to get away from the madman that was going to kill its host. Sandor quickly caught the snake and cut it to bits. I have now taken my share, my friend. A demon has been using you for years, Katrina, but now neither one of you have anything more to fear. He then led the bewildered couple back to the road and finally to the cemetery, where the story began. This is my home. I belong to the other world. I only had leave from it for 3 years. Time enough to repay a man who paid a debt for me. Your kindness could not be ignored. Not by me. I won't have much use of this money where I'm going, he said, handing his share back to grandfather. Why don't you buy your bride something nice? She definitely deserves it after you left her alone on her wedding night. Sandor, I don't know what to say. Sandor just smiled, hugged them both, and then vanished, leaving my grandfather and grandmother to have happy lives and to create children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and even great-great-grandchildren. When he finished talking, the old man hugged the child, who then turned around and left the room, and gently closed the red door. The child went to go live life in the wide world. And once upon a time called right now, that child has become an adult who knows this story, and who has learned how to offer to the ancestors. If you look closely, you might be able to see on the altar a statue of an old man with a large mustache, and next to the old man is a glass of red wine and a plate of food. Close your eyes. Breathe deeply. Remember deeply. And tell me, what foods do you smell? This story is categorized by folklorists with the motif The Grateful Dead. And yes, that's where the band got the name. It is so popular that there are also well-known literary versions, the most famous of which is Hans Christian Andersen's The Traveling Companion. And this particular version is based off of a Yugoslavian Romany variant in the book Gypsy Folktales by Diane Tong. There are some versions where, due to a more God-fearing attitude, the storyteller changed the ghost from grateful to evil and malicious. Because if the dead aren't in heaven, then they must be doing the work of Satan, right? Personally, I prefer the Grateful Dead versions. Hopefully this story evoked some meaning for you. Maybe it reminded you of someone you love, someone who has died. If so, I ask that you consider doing the following. Remember a story regarding that loved one. Find a picture or a belonging, or just something that represents them to you, and put a bit of their favorite drink and food before the object. Tell your loved one that he or she is loved and missed and remembered. And then tell that story to someone you love, someone living. Maybe they'll have a story to tell you in return. Hail the stories, hail the listeners, and hail the ancestors. Tales from the Ninth Tower, number 3, A Dead Man Gives Back. Story arrangement and performance by Lothar Tuppan. Sound effects from the Freesound Project. Music by Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech. Sound design and mastering by Lothar Tuppan. This presentation is copyright 2023 to Lothar Tuppan, and this recording is released under a Creative Commons 3.0 Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license. All other rights are reserved. The Ninth Tower Productions.